It's late in the afternoon. A young businessman, weary from a long day of work, pushes open the opaque glass doors to the local bank. Upon meeting the banker, the man gives the necessary information and eventually walks away with a generous sum to be paid back in the future. To the man, this loan is power. With it, he can invest in stocks, start a business, even buy a new home with the money loaned to him. However, he also has obligations to respect, payments due at regular intervals. And moreover, the man must protect this investment, for losing that money would no doubt bring ruin upon him. 230 plus years ago, America was given a loan. In a hot, dirty Philadelphia meeting house, 39 men signed a document essential to the future of all Americans. However, this document was far from ordinary. Rather, it was a loan of power. I'm referring to the United States Constitution. And today I want to show you how the Constitution is like a loan in three primary ways by looking at the power it provides us, moving on to the obligations we have to respect, and concluding with how we must protect it against ruin. First and foremost, any study of our Constitution must begin with a look at the power it provides for Americans. Whereas earlier forms of government were only interested in taking power for themselves, the Constitution set up a government of liberty. As Patrick Henry affirmed when he said, "The Constitution is not an instrument for the government to restrain the people. It is an instrument for the people to restrain the government." Now, our Constitution gives us power in many different ways. Article 1 of the Constitution sets up a legislative branch, giving the people a voice in the government. Section 2, Clause 1 reads, "The House of Representatives shall be composed of members chosen every second year by the people of the several states." So in other words, the people had a voice in the government through their election of representatives. Interestingly enough, the Constitution gave the power to elect senators to state legislatures, a practice that was finally given back to the people in 1913 through the passage of the 17th Amendment. Article 2 of our Constitution gives the people even more power by establishing the executive branch. Section 1, Clause 2 reads, "The executive power shall be vested in a President of the United States. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with his vice president, chosen for the same term, be elected." So America was to be led by an executive who both had a limit on the amount of time his term was to last, and who was not to come from some royal lineage, but was to be elected by the people. This means, friends, that any American who meets the qualifications, and so desires to be president, can become the leader of our nation if elected. And that fact, ladies and gentlemen, is a truly revolutionary concept. To think that anyone, regardless of race, religion, or previous status, could become the commander-in-chief of this country is in many ways unfathomable, especially when placed in historical context. Yet, the power does not stop there, as Article 3 sets up a court system to check the power of the other two branches. The court's main purpose was to keep an eye on the other two powers, and to ensure that they were not ignoring the will of the people, as put forth in the Constitution. In Federalist Number 78, Alexander Hamilton wrote, "If there should happen to be some irreconcilable variance between the Constitution and an act of Congress, the Constitution ought to be preferred to the statute, the intention of the people to the intention of their agents." And while Hamilton's writings had no real jurisdiction over the action of the court, his viewpoint was affirmed in the landmark decision of Marbury versus Madison, which established the process of judicial review. And while the Constitution gives the people power through a government of the people, it also does so by asserting freedoms of the people, many of which are affirmed in the first 10 amendments, also known to us as the Bill of Rights. The First Amendment affirms the freedoms of speech, religion, press, assembly, and petition. The second guarantees the freedom to bear arms, of which George Washington said, "Firearms are second only to the Constitution in importance. They are the people's liberty's teeth." Now, just as Washington was an advocate of gun rights, so other framers wanted to see freedoms they considered to be basic liberties affirmed. And as a result, later amendments affirmed the freedom to a fair trial, the 6th, the freedom from slavery, the 13th, and the freedom to vote regardless of either race or gender, both the 15th and the 19th Amendments. Now, as Americans, we love to embrace and maximize the liberties given to us by the Constitution. However, Just as a loan gives power with certain expectations, so the Constitution demands responsibility from those under it, leading us to the second part of our great loan, our obligations to the Constitution. The framers of our nation's Constitution agreed with the Greek philosopher Plato when he said that dictatorship naturally arises out of democracy, and the most aggravated form of tyranny and slavery out of the most extreme liberty. One need not look further than a few years beyond the ratification of the Constitution to revolutionary France to understand why putting checks on even the people is necessary for curbing despotic power and preserving domestic good. Well, fortunately, most Americans meet their obligations and even treat them as routine, including the arduous task of filing income taxes, a procedure set up with the passage of the 16th Amendment. Yet, there are other obligations that some see as noble and embrace as an honor. For example, during the key World War II Battle of Iwo Jima, Lieutenant Colonel Marion Chambers risked his life and the life of his men to capture a key position, an action which resulted in serious wounds and a Medal of Honor for Chambers. Now, had Chambers simply seen his duty to serve as a chore, he certainly would not have risked his life and the life of his men with such an action. But thankfully, he accepted his position with pride, and the results of his actions show exactly what kind of effect such a mindset can have. Another notable obligation that you and I have as American citizens is the duty to vote. It is one that we should all take seriously, as Samuel Adams affirmed when he said, "Let each citizen remember at the moment he is offering his vote that he is not making some present or compliment to please an individual, but that he is offering one of the most sacred trusts in human society, for which he is accountable both to God and his country." So by creating a healthy tension, as it were, between freedom and obligation, the framers of our nation's Constitution put into play a strong balancing act that has lasted for over 230 years. However, as the third part of our loan demands, we must protect the power that comes with it. If we as Americans desire to see the Constitution continue to have influence, we need to act. Michael Ferris, the founder of Patrick Henry College in Purcellville, Virginia, was correct when he asserted, if our government no longer faithfully adheres to the Constitution, ultimately the problem is that we are not doing our job as enlightened citizens. And if the government's current actions are somehow out of step with the Constitution, it is our duty as citizens to act. So how do we do this? How do we, as Dr. Ferris said, act? Well, one of the best ways, ladies and gentlemen, is through our ballot. We must vote, not as citizens who adhere to a certain political party, but as citizens who adhere to the Constitution. In other words, we vote for officials who will, as the presidential oath of office affirms, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Indeed, as Abraham Lincoln said in the Gettysburg Address, the Constitution sets up a government that, of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. And interestingly enough, Lincoln's quote truly sums up this loan of power that is the Constitution. Lincoln spoke of a government for the people, and the Constitution loans the people power through the government it sets up, making the government one for the people. Furthermore, Lincoln mentioned a government of the people, and while the Constitution certainly loans the people power, it also requires them to meet obligations, making the government one of the people because it relies on the people's cooperation. Last but not least, Lincoln spoke of a government by the people. Just as an ordinary loan must be protected, so our constitutional form of government must be upheld by the people if our nation shall not perish from the earth. The great Frenchman Alexis de Tocqueville once said that America is great because she is good, and that if America ever ceases to be good, America will cease to be great. As patriotic citizens of the most influential nation on earth, we must treat our Constitution as we would treat a loan. We must embrace the freedoms it provides us. We must rise to meet the obligations it demands of us. And we must strive to protect it with all vigilance, knowing that the Constitution, this power loaned to us, is what has made this nation great. Thank you.